Something I think many Fire Force fans fail to do is compliment the scenery and set design, because honestly, most battle shonens, they don't put too much thought unless it's a very key area for a fight scene. In terms of the design, what it represents, I'm sure like when you go into like the Nether or Hell and things like that, the author's going to take their initiative to make sure it looks pretty cool and feels like it complements the scene at hand. But every single thing, and ever since episode 1 of Fire Force season 1, I've really loved the design. And this episode, for going to a church just to baptize the weapons and things like that, it's something that didn't need a lot of importance. You could have just had like a fountain, a cross, a couple of flowers, and that would have served purpose. But honestly, I feel like everything about this world is a character just as much as someone like Shinra. It really does feel like there's this like culture and history, and there's this symbolic meaning behind almost everything. And I really like that about this show. As much as I love the set design though, that wasn't the star of the episode, but something that I wanted to compliment, because not many people I think are complimenting areas that deserve it, because Fire Force really has become something truly extraordinary. And while I'm not here to say Tamaki is best written character or anything like that, I have to say, the comedy with her and the whole Fire Blast situation at the end of the episode had me rolling. I was actually interested to see what they were going to do with the remaining section of the episode, because it felt like we still had time for a quarter of the episode to do something, so I figured they're going to just kind of start the next big thing, and they kind of do, but it's more just goofy gags, but I'm very happy about them being a part of this episode. Tamaki is technically a useless character. She has comedy moments, and she constantly trips to get her clothes off, because that's literally a part of her character it's written in, but it's not that season 1 really like changed to season 2. All that changed is the characters interacting with her perviness are a lot more interesting, so the scenes surrounding the fan service scene, it become still eye candy, but at the end of the day, they're way more funny. And to have a guy whose entire point is training day in and day out, eyes bleeding, he's going to pervy bars, he's watching all the pornographic imagery and movies, and at the end of the day, he keeps trying to challenge this girl who he views as his biggest competition, and she continues to fan service him up. That is a really stupid joke on paper, but Fire Force honestly made it work really well. I thought it was hilarious to see a girl who thinks that this is honestly like someone just madly in love with her, and she's like, will you just leave me alone? You're the enemy. I'm going to continue to beat you. And he views her as this strategic evil genius. I love how the cult doesn't even really realize what he's going up against, or maybe they do, but it almost felt to me like they just view like whoever was able to beat him must be insanely powerful, and oh my god, look at his training. He's really becoming so extraordinary. And all he's doing is just not being wowed by the female form like before, yet every single time he goes up against her, either it's like the real thing's way more powerful than the stuff I was looking at, so I'm gonna get used to the actual thing in person. She still beats me, so I'm gonna be a creep, I'm gonna watch people's skirts fly up, and it was just absurd to the point where like every time you think, okay, what's he gonna say that's going to be the reason why he couldn't beat her this time? And the last one he says is that the amateurs are just in a league of their own. And I'm like, this show had so much fun with such a stupid premise, but it left me rolling. It was comedy gold, some of the best we've seen over the past few weeks. And I know there's some people who are like hardcore Tamaki fans. I'm not here to say I wish she was gone from the show. I actually like her addition now that the comedy is kind of targeting characters who I think take that comedy, that generic, like, oh, here's another fan service scene, and they turn it hilarious. Like, that entire last section of the episode, I love, and I'd honestly argue might be my favorite part of this episode, despite not having, like, a lot of importance. I think Season 1 definitely missed a lot with that comedy and was just more eye candy than actual funny moments. But at least now that, even though she hasn't done too much, hopefully before Season 2 wraps up, she'll actually have an arc where she's not just, like, stripping down to her panties and she actually does something important. But I'm glad that the comedy around her is still there and alive and well. But the actual idea and the theme of this episode was the idea of faith. And for the church, it's actually a really interesting concept, because the idea of the person you're praying to is criminal, it's just demonic, it's horrible. And obviously nuns and priests and things like that will eventually start to question their faith. And I think that's pretty much what happened when the father in this episode ended up bursting alive and, Shinra had to put him to rest. It's very interesting because Sister Iris is someone who's kind of like the shining beacon for the Company 8. And with her starting to lose her faith, that could be very bad. And I think that's partially why Shinra kind of sees her in a demonic form before seeing her in her normal form when he's giving her a piggyback ride, which I thought was quite cute and adorable. If she loses her faith, not only is there a risk of her becoming an inferno, at the same time, the company will crumble. She is their positivity, their beacon, And if she loses that faith, everything will crumble. That's what makes Company 8 so powerful. And the idea of faith is very interesting because in this episode, it touches upon not necessarily looking at exactly what they're believing in, but have more of an idea. And that's honestly something which I think relates to every religion ever. Not necessarily believing in said mythical thing, but more of an idea to keep you grounded and to keep you heading forward so you don't get lost in that negativity. Viewing the idea of death as literally just being your mind is done and you won't be able to remember everyone you loved and cherished in your life, it's a lot more painful to kind of tackle each day if you think about that being your end. It's a lot more hopeful to say there could be something better. And the way Fire Force was actually able to use that religious theme without shoving a religious agenda down our throat. And I'm saying all this as someone who doesn't believe in any religion whatsoever, but I really like how Fire Force is able to take that and incorporate it in a way to give these characters face so it doesn't shatter and they can continue to tackle their day in and day out activities without the fear of saying, like, what's the point and what's even the reason to do this? And it's nice to see a character as small as Sister Iris. I know she's a main part of Company 8, but if you were to ask most Fire Force fans, who is the most dominating factor of Fire Force in terms of propelling the narrative forward, I don't think many people are going to say Sister Iris. So to have her really be this kind of the spine of the operation, without her, no one's going to be able to have the positivity to carry forward, especially characters like Shinra. Yeah, there's the whole like romantic potential between the two and also the fear that Shinra has of what could happen to her. And honestly, based on their banter and the cute moments in this episode, you could honestly see them being a pretty successful couple, all things considered, especially with her saying, like, you're the one person I'm going to start to lean on when I have things on my mind. But at the end of the day, it's really nice to see how he compares her almost to like a sunflower, and she makes a joke that, Iris doesn't stand for sunflower. But it's a good example of what she really represents to the group, and it really does show that the characters are more than just, here's the nun that makes the prayer. She actually is a very important person to keep them all kind of spiritually motivated, even if they don't directly believe in the thing that she believes in. And that's what I like about Fire Force, is it definitely has a lot of these deeper undertones and meanings. And yeah, you can look at the end of the episode as being comedy gold, or you can look at characters like Tamaki literally just flashing her panties or completely stripping naked because of her sexual quirk that's literally designed into her. At the end of the day, the main messages and core themes, I think Season 2 has done a remarkable job at really fleshing them out and really making us say Fire Force is so much more than meets the eye. And I always thought that about Season 1, and I'm glad like the more episodes you watch, you really see those ideas and themes really get fleshed out. That's why I say this is my favorite work from the author, even more than things like Soul Eater, and I thought they did a remarkable job with that series. I really like even the small glimpses of action we got in this episode. Like, they kick off with something very cinematic. Like, I imagine if Fire Force ever got a movie, the intro, like 30 seconds of that fight is probably a very good indicator of what the movie would look like. It just had this very cinematic flair that really brought it out, and even the little glimpse towards the end of the episode where we got the actual father bursting in flame and things like that, it was great. It wasn't something overly major that needed a 10-minute fight, and I'm sure some people who are more in it for those action spectacle scenes are going to claim this to be a more boring episode, but probably really like the end of the episode. I think this episode was very, very strong. Did I like it as much as last week? Hell no. But at the end of the day, you can't just have constant non-stop insanity. You need to slow it down, and the messages about faith and what it represents to these characters is a very important thing for them, and without it, I don't think there would be as much connection going forward, especially with the remainder 6 episodes of this season. So let me know your thoughts and feelings though. What did you think of the idea of faith and the message that it brought up, and what did you think of that comedy gold towards the end of the episode? Whatever you're feeling, of course, let me know. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like to show your support and hit that subscribe button if you have been new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.